Welcome to the first episode of a new panel series, Fintechs in the Community, where we talk with our members about how fintechs solve problems and provide solutions for Canadians. We're kicking off this series discussing small businesses in honor of October being Small Business Month in Canada. Running a small business is always a challenging endeavor, and small businesses were hit particularly hard by closures as a result of the pandemic. While government support was helpful, it often wasn't enough, and businesses needed to be creative and efficient with how they operated. One of those tactics is to go beyond the bank, look past traditional financial services and to fintechs, who provide innovative and unique solutions to the problems that are unique to small businesses. In this panel, we'll hear from fintechs who provide tools that support local businesses and the communities that they serve. Today, we have Craig, CEO and founder of Peloton Technologies. The Peloton platform is a software engineering advancement in the payment space, providing end clients with an agnostic view of merchant acquirers and financial institutions. We have Marcius, CEO and founder of SAVVII, offering an AI-powered suite of customizable solutions that allow users to take an active role in their financial health, including smart saving and spending. And finally, we have Mark, head of direct pay at Payment Source. Payment Source offers white label and customized payment solutions to enterprises, digital businesses, and government organizations. And I'm Kelly Sullivan from Fintechs Canada, and I'll be your moderator today. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Before we get into the details, I want to talk a little bit about small businesses more generally. As you've created your products and services, why have you focused on small businesses? In your experience, what makes them unique, and why target them for your products? Craig, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Kelly. Small businesses, they form the backbone in Canada and likely in most countries as well. We have two distinct business models at Peloton, and one of those is a SaaS-based platform. So obviously, the more clients, the more accounts that we generate in that model, the better we are for it. And our products speak to the industry pain points. So they don't necessarily speak to pain points for small businesses. These pain points are shared from all types of businesses. They just impact small businesses more than the larger businesses, and especially on the bottom line.
Great, thanks, Craig. Marcius, what about you?
You know, for us, it's really like the small businesses, as Craig was saying, they make up the backbone of Canada. The last numbers that I looked at, there was over 1.2 million small businesses in Canada. They predominantly make up about 38% of the GDP in Canada as well. So it's roughly about $900 billion being spent at these small businesses. So it's quite a significant market. For us, we saw a number of gaps, and I traditionally looking at the financial products that are in the market that small businesses have access to, including lending as well as savings. We saw a number of opportunities where we can help these small businesses manage their finances, manage their costs, get access to capital, attracting new customers, as well as retaining new talent and retaining their customers as well. So we saw the opportunity. So that's what brought us to what SAVVI's business products are going to be launching later this year.
Thanks. Small is maybe a bit of a misnomer, eh? 38% of GDP is not that small.
Yeah, if you just look at that sample right there, even from a volume perspective, a lot of the contribution that small business makes to Canada, it's more than consumer. So it's definitely a large market.
Right, thanks. Mark, anything to add?
Yeah, hi, Kelly. Let me start by saying, I guess, that small businesses in Canada do deserve our support. They serve as that connection to community. They bring those thoughtful and unique products and services to us. And they're a link to a more sustainable future for all of us. In many ways, our recent supply chain shortages and the impact it has had on consumer inflation has really shown us that global approach is fragile. I mean, yes, we do live in a global economy, but it's also the element of joy that comes from locally sourced goods and services that for a moment, I think many of us have forgotten about. So, to answer your second part, why target them? To me, the answer really is about value. And I think Craig touched upon this as well, where, I'm constantly asking myself, and looking for new ways to provide greater value generation and the impact that technology has on a small business, that the value that is realized and felt by those business owners is magnitudes more meaningful. And sometimes we forget about that as we seek to land that next enterprise deal worth millions, overlooking what value is truly being delivered and the impact it has on us as Canadians and our community.
Great. Thanks, Mark. You mentioned the supply chain and the limitations or the fragility that we all noticed during the pandemic. Another part of the pandemic that I think was a bit surprising or a big change for small business was the shift to online when we were all stuck at home. So e-commerce became quite a popular tool for small businesses. So how do you support this new approach? And do you see this trend continuing, or has it dropped in popularity now that we're all allowed out in the world again? Mark, do you want to?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Canadians are shopping online now more than ever. I do look back a little bit to peak pandemic times when e-commerce companies bet big on the rapid acceleration of online shopping at the expense of in-store experiences, only now to backtrack and right size a little bit as we come back into more of a balance. It's unfortunate some of the consequences of those bets are many losing their jobs. But overall, I think no doubt we're going to start to continue to see growth in online commerce, especially as new forms of shopping come about. Social commerce, especially, perhaps the metaverse. But for now, I think we're seeing a little bit of a return to physical retailing as well. But what I see as another trend, and that I want to bring up is that online payment friction is also on the rise. Almost 3 out of 5 Canadians are reporting or abandoning their card at checkout to payment-related issues. This could be as simple as a declined credit card. Maybe it's perceived trust and security issues with the merchant's checkout. Even if the lack of a preferred payment method is enough to cause a user to abandon their purchase. So what we're seeing is the checkout becoming that last mile in a buyer's journey and the final opportunity for a business to impart a positive experience and influence that conversion. So the thing is, we're going to start seeing more payment-related friction as consumer preferences continue to evolve. Social, economic, and other macro trends are impacting the way people pay for things. I mean, the news lately, credit cards can charge a service fee in Canada. Think about the impact that that's going to have on the checkout and the shopper experience for a moment. So overall, I think that checkout is one area that I'm seeing as becoming strategically more important and an area for further innovation from fintechs and paytechs alike.
That is definitely something. I may have online shopped once or twice before, just casually. But you're right about the payment method at the end, especially as someone who works in payments. I don't want to have to get up and get my card or switch cards or payments. So I definitely, I'm looking forward to your innovation in that space as a consumer. Craig, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and like I always find it interesting that people use e-commerce, that term. To me, it's all just commerce. Using the internet to process a transaction, to do that is just a natural progression. If we look at, people have coined the term V-commerce now for using virtual reality to actually try and use something to buy something, right? I think Mark touched on it. If you look at the metaverse, and there might be meta-commerce as well, right? Where you'll buy some non-physical good or maybe a service in a completely virtual environment, right? So to me, this is all just commerce. These are natural progressions. The human race has a tendency to overdo it, come back and settle in at the right market share where it should be. So for me, yes, I think we overdid it. The pandemic sort of accelerated the overdoing of it. There was a lot of people that went into that space and said, I'm going to accept the risks that go with fraud because the business is just huge. And now rules and regulations are coming into play that are saying, hey, we need to tighten this up. And that may have something to do with the friction that Mark's talking about there. People now have to put extra information in, or a 2-step process in order to get past that final checkout stage. So we're just finding out how to streamline this and do it in a secure, safe, private manner. And once we do that, it'll be here to remain.
I think you're right. And you've touched on earlier about how the problems for small businesses are not unique, but the impact is. And I think you've touched on a really good point there. And coming up with all of those solutions without a fintech partner would be quite challenging for a small business compared to a larger one who can do that in-house. So, and I also think you're right. We've maybe aged ourselves by calling it e-commerce because it's just happening. What other trends do you see? So, shifting away from the online back into the store, what payment trends do you see unique to the small business community? Marcius?
So on my radar, that I have personally done research and have viewed for our strategy within SAVVII, we see a lot of growth in e-commerce, obviously, which we just touched on, mobile commerce, declining of cash payments, significant increase to tap to pay, so contactless, increasing of the limits that are allowed and putting that responsibility more onto the issuer than onto the acquirer. Growth of QR codes is a significant one, actually. We've noticed QR codes making a big resurgence in the marketplace as a payment form factor, especially in the restaurant and entertainment type of category, as well as BNPL. Buy now, pay later services has exploded and it continues to grow. We definitely see that trend continuing and only growing from here.
Mark, what do you see next? What's your crystal ball telling you for payments methods for small businesses?
Yeah, it's really an interesting time here in Canada. I mentioned we haven't seen the checkout page be as strategic as it should be for businesses. And let me clarify, that could be a checkout page for an online store on a platform such as Shopify, or it could be the payment page for an online invoice sent from an accounting program such as Xero. Again, this is the last mile in the customer's overall purchase experience, but we're treating it as an administrative function. The payment needs and preferences vary greatly from one customer group to another. Yet the digital payment process is often one size fits all, especially here in North America, Canada. We over-index on credit cards as the primary payment method to support. And ultimately, there's nothing innovative about that. But I guess like everything else, consumer preferences, attitudes are shifting, and technology is opening up new opportunities to enhance and support the payment experience. And with that comes, one global trend that I've been keenly following, and it's something I don't think we can overlook here in Canada. And that's that large shift we're seeing in consumers towards bank payments for online purchases. For example, Ideal in the Netherlands captures more than half of all online purchases. GiroPay in Germany, it's their most popular payment method. In markets all over, bank payments are exploding in popularity. And we're actually starting to see that here in Canada with Interac e-Transfer. Consider for a moment that there were over 1 billion e-transfers sent by Canadians in the last 12 months. Compare that to about 500 million e-commerce payments during the same time. That's for all payment types combined. And you can start to see just how popular it is in Canada. Canadians just love e-transfer and they use it regularly. And we're seeing the same experience with countries with similar services having the same results. And so to me, this trend is really amazing to see this adoption by consumers of innovative new payment methods like e-transfer with direct pay.
And Craig, what about you?
I do want to just challenge that last point by Mark there, where they said that Canadians love e-transfer. I'm sure they love it when it works, but when it goes down for 48 to 72 hours, they probably don't like it as much, Mark. So
true enough. That's true of any payment method that goes down and you rely on. And yeah, absolutely.
And it probably speaks to another point about why fintechs are really required here. Obviously we're leaving our innovation up to our banks, and that's the result we get when we let financial institutions try to be technology companies, right? So we do need a blend of this, and we do need to work together. But that's a little off topic there, Kelly. Back to the question. Mark did touch on it earlier. I think surcharging is very, very interesting at the moment in Canada. It's going to play out over the next 6 to 12 months. Visa and MasterCard have said, hey, here are the rules, but obviously very few of the acquirers, if any, are ready to actually go. Therefore, any of the payment processors can't do it yet without being certified. So who knows when it'll actually really be available. And then secondly, it's going to be super interesting to see what sort of businesses can use it. It might be defined by their customer base, and then what the consumers actually think about it and how they react to it. So surcharging is definitely something that's on my radar that we're going to be involved in and probably watching very closely over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think they're calling them convenience fees now.
Yeah, maybe that has another definition down south. But, it's very interesting to note the differences between the card brands as well. Obviously, American Express don't believe in surcharging at all, and Visa and MasterCard have set some limits associated with it, even to the point where Visa has referenced American Express in their actual terms. So it's just interesting to watch this all play out.
I think you've touched on almost like the yin and yang, the rise in bank payments and then the potential for surcharges. So it'll be really interesting to see how those trends play out. We'll have to come back for Small Business Month in 2023 and see how good your predictions were related to these trends. Now, Marcius, you talked about your product launching soon at the end of this year, and your services are a little bit different. So your products are focused on integration and the full picture of someone's financial life. So why did you take this approach rather than narrowing in on one product?
Yeah, so good question. So as part of our product strategy, we saw the opportunity to provide small businesses with the tools to manage their business. That's like right now, if you speak to a lot of small business owners, they use different tools and they're all dispersed all over the place. Different subscriptions, different memberships, different everything. So for invoicing, payroll, any type of receipt capture, their financial partner for credit or BNPL that they have for lending to their customers or lending for themselves. So bringing that all under a holistic umbrella, having one dashboard, seeing your whole business through one lens, I see it as a very powerful tool, and I think it would benefit and provide value to our customers and our small businesses. The other aspect of our product is we small businesses don't really get advice, right? So we have created an AI-powered suite that's going to actually tell them where they can save, where they're overspending, what actions they can take in order to mitigate any type of stress that is on their portfolio. So it's a very exciting product for us, and I do believe that small businesses will definitely find value.
I think so too. And you touched a little bit on that health and wellness and that full picture. And Mark, your product also references the financial health and wellness of its customers and small business. So for the two of you, what is the responsibility of Fintechs to support those good financial choices for those customers? Marcius, why don't we let you continue your thought?
I think Fintech plays a significant role. I think it was Mark that touched on, oh no, it was Craig that touched on earlier. If we're waiting for the banks to innovate, you're going to get what we get, right? I think Fintechs are more nimble. We can get things done a lot easier than the banks at a much cheaper cost, and that in turn allows us to go to market with better products, right? So to me, I think Fintechs are the ones that are the catalyst for change. We can do it, and that's the bottom line, right? So there's definitely no roadblocks, or other than funding in most cases, but that we have in comparison to like the banks or other financial institutions. Right?
And so do you think you support your clients better in that health and wellness area of their finances, not just pumping out services, right?
I do, because as I was touching on before with our product, I don't think, like, I've been a small business owner. I'm also a startup, and I'm also a serial entrepreneur. I've never received advice from my financial institution on the performance of my business or recommendations on things to do with excess capital or how to even get credit, for instance, right? So I think there's definitely a huge gap when it comes to advice for small businesses. And there's definitely opportunity there to embrace the small business and help them through their transition into building their business.
As learning from your own experience, right? And applying that back.
Absolutely.
A bit of paying it forward in the fintech space.
Yeah.
Mark, what about direct pay?
Yeah, so interestingly, financial inclusion to me is as much about choice and smart payment options as it is about access to traditional banking services. Consider that accessibility, inclusion, diversity. These are all core tenets of Canada. Yet when it comes to online payments, we're kind of a closed door. I mentioned we over-index on credit cards, and we do very little to, support inclusive payment options. So very little to support fiscal responsibility. And when I say fiscal responsibility, what I mean is that, financial stress is now recognized as a mainstream issue and social problem in Canada. The kind of stress that, consumer debt places on users can negatively impact mental and physical health, work productivity, family life even. And it's across all household income groups too. We're seeing, concerning 3-year trends. And this applies to high income families as well. 63% of households earning over $100,000 are stating that money worries are causing them emotional stress. You combine that with soaring home prices, recent inflation, we talked about that, and more availability and reliance on credit, including the use of installment plans for everyday goods such as groceries. And you can start to see how things really aren't sustainable. So I guess I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, only to highlight that change is constant. My son, for example, is now being taught a financial literacy course in his grade 8 class at school. My generation didn't have that. And so what I think we're going to see is that shift in consumer attitudes when it comes to paying for things. I mean, we're already seeing this entire new generation growing up digital. They don't carry wallets, let alone cards. And they've also grown up with a different outlook to saving and spending compared to previous generations. So I don't necessarily think, to sum it all up, I don't necessarily think it's the role of a fintech to push upon Canadians good financial decisions, but I think we instead have to recognize that there is an opportunity that comes when consumer behaviors and attitudes towards debt and spending change, and to create products that support and encourage those changes.
Yeah, maybe less of a responsibility of fintech specifically, but more as Canadians to support our community and to support good financial health and wellness and share that information. Craig, it looked like you were going to add something there.
I had a few comments there. One of them was I just wanted to share something that, Mark, I didn't use a checkbook until I immigrated to Canada in 2004. Growing up in Australia, everything could be digital. So I'd like to think we're closely related generation-wise there, Mark, but we're not too far apart. But it is definitely interesting in other countries how far advanced they may be or how backwards Canada is in some regards. It's an interesting scenario because Canada has some of the most stable financial institutions in the world. However, in relation to services, can you do what I did 20 years ago where I wired a friend $8,000 that I owed him for a travel trip through SWIFT to another banking provider for free from my online banking portal in Australia? I can't even do that today in Canada.
I used to work with a woman from the Netherlands, and she was in her early 20s. And the only time she had seen a check in the Netherlands was in a museum. And she had to write a check for her rent first and last month when she immigrated to Canada. And she had literally just seen it under a glass box. She was like in awe that we still used checks. So yeah, I think you're right, Craig. We've got maybe some ways to go in some areas. Speaking about responsibilities for fintechs, while health and wellness may be the responsibility of all of us, privacy really falls into that fintech space. And so, Craig, you're collecting a lot of data from your customers. How do you protect that and how do you keep it secure?
Well, first of all, we don't collect a lot of data from our customers. We are the custodians of that data for our clients. And that's the way we like to present that. And that's a very different opinion to let's just say the major financial institutions that believe they own that data, right? So with that hat on, we take it very seriously. Our security processes and the compliance that we have to do with certain rules and regulations, we make sure that we go above and beyond them where we can, right? Where it makes sense for the business to do so. So first and foremost, we want to make sure we're storing that information, that the access to that information is appropriately sort of vetted before people can be added and gain access. But ultimately, there are some good standards, there are good regulations. The issues, if you're looking at them, are between what you must do as a payment processor and the rules and regulation and the Privacy Acts. There are some contradictions in there. Some of them I'm not a fan of. I don't know what the solution to those contradictions are, and I don't think anyone in the country does at this point. That's why they're there and nobody's solved them. But these are just interesting things that I think change from a government federal level will need to address over the next few years if we're going to be able to move forward in an innovative way.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the technical parts, a lot about how things are happening, but on either end of that technology, both on the fintech side and the small business side, there's a human. And small businesses, they have unique needs. Marcius, you touched on it a bit already. Your approach to serving a small business has to be unique. So how do you manage those relationships with your small businesses? And how do you set yourself up to be successful in providing the support they need to be successful? Craig, why don't we continue on with you?
Okay, I'm going to go first on this one.
Yeah.
I don't think the way that we provide the support and services we do is unique. I mean, we try to provide online help so people can self-serve. We try to provide intuitive interfaces so that things make sense and maybe they don't need to go and look for that help. But ultimately, when you're learning a new tool or a tool that's different or doing something in a different way that's innovative and change is a part of that, you may have questions, or it may take some time in order to sort of figure it out. So we provide support in the traditional ways. There's an email address, there's a phone number. You can ring us up, you can send us an email, and we'll get back to you promptly in a very old-fashioned manner and sort your problem out over the phone or via email. So that hasn't changed for us, but I know that there are a lot of companies out there where the scope of their organization and their grow fast and die mentality just does not allow them to be able to do that sort of customer service.
Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I don't think there are any secrets here. Good customer service is good customer service, right? But more importantly, think past the business and think about their customer. This is where it starts. And I think this is where I connect the dots back to the value that you can provide and what we started off talking about. Identify how you provide value to the merchants by helping them serve and grow their customers. Everything else kind of follows from that start. So when it comes to best practices, I guess, my advice would be that, we need continued innovation and adoption of smart, secure payment options, including bank payments that support the next wave of commerce and consumer preferences. For example, like how do you authorize a purchase in real time, yet limit access to your personal and financial details like we were talking about, especially in the virtual world? I look at direct pay and how we have the capability now to allow a user to select their bank, authorize their payment with Face ID, for example, and not have the merchant access any personal and financial details. Now, the consumer gets to pay how they want, not having to worry about security, and the merchant increases their checkout conversions and gets to keep more of what they earn through a simple low-cost payment method. I mean, that's value created on both sides.
Marcius, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with both Craig and Mark. Creating value for the customers for me, I think the most valuable commodity to small businesses today is time, right? And if I can save them time, I'll ultimately save them money, and I'll also be assisting them in running their business healthily.
So I guess the reputation of the fintech company that's full of bros who are only focused on technology, who aren't going to answer your question, make you feel stupid if you don't understand, sounds like that is a cliche or an outdated stereotype.
I don't know if that's outdated, Kelly. I think it's probably a bit cultural. Canadians are just polite, and I think that translates over to customer service.
I think so too. So you can call your friendly fintech and they'll help you just in the same way anyone else. You guys have touched on it throughout our last 35 minutes or so together. But as we close out, I just want you to sum up, what's the number one problem that you solve for a small business? Why should a small business reach out to you? Craig, you've been starting us off. So let's continue this as we'll continue the trend as we close out.
Sure, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating Marcia's last statement here, but we develop tools that streamline your financial operations. It basically saves you time and money, right? So that's the theme here, I think, and that's the theme with every fintech. If you're not saving people time, and small businesses especially appreciate that time back, and then if you can do it in a cost-effective manner, then you've won their business, right?
Yeah. Marcius, what's the number one problem? You can say time too.
No, I touched on time, but ultimately, like, owning a small business is very emotional, and a lot of the times, the small business owner, they have their own personal capital tied into the business, which makes it really like nerve-wracking, right? You could like you're really making, to become a small business, you're really making a decision that it's a fairly stressful one, right? And so providing these customers the tools they need to be successful in their business is key. That's really what it is. Don't complicate their lives even further. Don't have them go out and have 7 different apps to manage their business. Consolidation, optimal view, and advice. That's why I would say for these small businesses to contact my organization. That's the value we bring. Thanks.
And Mark?
Yeah, with direct pay, it really is as simple as access to a new customer segment. New payment options open up access to new customers who otherwise might not have or could not have shopped with you. We're seeing on average of 17% lift for merchants simply by adding direct pay. And again, it doesn't matter if you're an online retailer, on an e-commerce platform like Shopify, or a business using zero accounting to send out invoices for the services that you provide. Adding direct pay can increase your sales and help you keep more of what you earn. It's that simple.
Thanks. Well, you guys touched on it a bit throughout. I think it was Mark, you at the beginning talked about the passion and the quality and the unique goods and services that small businesses provide. And all 3 of your products allow those businesses to focus on that, to focus on what they love, providing great services and products to us, while you guys save them time, energy, and money on the back end. So great job, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, and good luck, everyone, with Small Business Month.
Thanks for having us, Kelly.
Thank you,
thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Marcius.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Great talking with you guys.